What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Mount Rushmore edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, are Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
And Robert Felice.
Hello.
So, as you can tell by the way that I introduced this and all the labels and things on your screen and everything like that, this is Mount Rushmore, something that we've done many editions of in this point because we've done too many in each episode for me to keep track of. Probably something around like 60 lists or something at this point that we've done. But here's how it works for anybody that is brand new to the podcast. We are looking for the 4 representatives of whatever category it is that we are talking about. Now, this is, of course, professional wrestling because, hey, it's Mark Out Moment. We're a pro wrestling channel, so that's the whole point. We're not talking about the Mount Rushmore of other things like presidents and whatnot. But we've done different categories of different things in the past. And what we usually like to do here is we go into this with at least some names in mind of what we want to do. And then we'll bounce it off of each other. And we have to decide on a vote of at least 2 votes to, 2-1 or whatever it might be. Usually we get to some kind of unanimous vote to settle on who represents this best. And, in the past we've done like the Mount Rushmore of tag teams, and we've done the Mount Rushmore of like Money in the Bank winners, I think that we might have done or something. It's hard to check, but it's all up on the wiki. And this edition is going to be doing something that we really would never have gotten an opportunity to do in just a random thing without it feeling a little bit more random. Yet, in the past week or so, we had a big adjustment to the commentary teams and the backstage interviewers, and the ring announcer group didn't really change, but that whole broadcast team aspect had changed in WWE. And now, we have a blank week where we didn't need to do anything in particular. It was like a pay-per-view discussion or anything. So what better time than to kind of combine everything that we could have done with all this. And we're going to be talking about the Mount Rushmore of WWE ring announcers, commentators, interviewers, panelists. We might talk about the worst of these and do, a best Mount Rushmore and a worst Mount Rushmore. We usually like to see where the discussion takes us. And, we might end up having supplemental lists like the A tier and the B tier and all that. But as we go along here and we tell you what we think and we end up making our picks and all, we want to know what your discussion points are too and who you would have picked for these categories. So drop a comment below on YouTube if you are watching us over there. If you are, make sure that you click on all the other things that are supporting a YouTube channel that you normally would do, like that little like button and that subscribe button. Next to that, you got the join button, which if you are a part of the Patreon, is the exact same thing. Patreon.com/SmarkOutMoment. You got the Darkcast tier, you got the Pick Your Poison tier, you got even the $1 tier a month to just help us out a little bit with some spare change that you got. Same thing with that little thanks button that's over there. And as far as the other things on this marketplace go, if you want to pick up some merchandise, you got Redbubble and you got TeePublic for not just Mark Out Moment, but the other things under a mango tree that I will explain a little bit later on because we're already heavy on plugs. And I want to get into this discussion because I think that this is a very unique Mount Rushmore where we could probably, if we were just trying to, speed run this, we could probably settle on the main picks relatively quickly. But I do think that there's probably going to be some nuance going on. We may have some debates on some of these people. It might be one of those things where we have a guaranteed 3, and then it's just, okay, well, there's 4 names that could be the 4th, and that's what we debate about the most. Or maybe the idea of having the B tier of these different things is where we really get into the discussion points. So before we start picking actual people, I think that one of the things that we should do, because people seem to get confused about these, is to specify what these categories are. Because I see constantly, I don't know if you guys come across this as much as I do. You might, and it might just not bug you as much because I'm very much a stickler. I absolutely hate it when people say something like, oh, Jim Ross is my favorite WWE announcer. Because I'm like, he's a commentator. He's not an announcer. Announcer is like coming to the ring with the WWE champion, Roman Reigns. Does that bug you guys as much as this bugs me?
Admittedly, when I'm writing, I interchange them, but in speaking, it does frustrate me. So I'm a hypocrite.
I've got bigger priorities.
Yeah. I'm envious. The difference between them, just for anybody who is kind of curious, interviewer will mean the person who's holding the microphone, asking questions. They're usually backstage. Sometimes they're in the ring. This is something like probably one of the main people that we're going to pick here. Mean Gene Okerlund was an interviewer. He was not a commentator. I mean, he probably popped up on commentary once or twice or something. I don't know. But primarily, he was a backstage interviewer. Somebody like Jim Ross, as we mentioned, or like a Gorilla Monsoon or Gordon Soley or anybody on the commentary booth calling the match as a play-by-play commentator or a color commentator, whatever. That's the commentary team. And the ring announcers are the ones that are standing in the ring or, announcing the winner of the match or anything along those lines. Now, panelist is the term that I'm going to be using, at least, for the people that are on like the pre-show or they're breaking down the analysis of the whole thing. This is when you see like for Extreme Rules that just happened. It was Kevin Patrick, Jerry Lawler, Booker T, and Peter Rosenberg, I think, where they're talking, hey, this is the card that we're going to see tonight. I think this person's going to win. I think that person's going to win. We might not do a Mount Rushmore of panelists because it's kind of, I don't know.
They're interchangeable because obviously Kevin Patrick is also a backstage interviewer and now a play-by-play on Monday Night Raw. They are interchangeable in a lot of ways. Even like Mean Gene was a backstage interviewer, probably first and foremost for us, but he was a commentator regularly for the AWA and early days in the WWF as well. So again, interchangeable, but obviously certain people are going to shine in specific spots.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people dip their toes into one thing or another. Like, Renee Young did some commentary, and she was an interviewer, and she was a panelist, and plenty of people just pop up for a guest stint here and there, where like an R-Truth will do commentary on Main Event for like a few months or something.
Remember when The Miz was the first play-by-play guy on Main Event?
I don't remember that at all, but it doesn't sound like something that would be crazy to me. And they try people out in different roles, and you get people that like, temporarily are the ring announcer for this thing, and then they end up joining something else or whatever. So, I mean, a lot of those people, they just get lost into the history books because we just can't remember the most bland and mundane. But I'm sure that we've got a lot of different names here that we can bring up, and I guess we should probably just get started on this. Do you guys want to do any of these in particular to start off with to like, okay, we're going to narrow down all the interviewers or like, bounce back and forth or anything? I think it's probably better if we end up sticking to one, but you got any preferences?
I think it's probably easiest to knock out the ring announcers.
I mean, I'm down for that. I think this one's obviously the gold standard that we can't possibly not have on the list. The Fink.
Finkel he's the Lincoln. He can get his own statue. He doesn't need to be on a Mount Rushmore if he wants to.
Finken Memorial.
Yeah, that's. I was trying not to do that.
Howard Finkel is easily my favorite ring announcer of all time. Oh, and on top of this, we're sticking to WWE on this, but we might end up like, hey, shout out if we do an extra list of these people and all that. We'll talk about that, but we're basically sticking to WWE ring announcers. Howard Finkel is so synonymous with that sound that if I hear and knew whatever champion, I think, even though at this point it's been so many years, I still think that it should be in his voice.
Yeah. Finkel's the greatest.
Yeah, Finkel is clearly the standout choice for ring announcers in WWE history, to the point where when they advertised the match as the greatest wrestling match to have ever happened, they brought back his voice from the dead to be the ring announcer for it. So yeah, he is like the guy that people will most fondly remember in terms of announcing people to the ring. I always remember that the night that CM Punk brought him back for that one shot for his WWE Championship victory at Survivor Series, and like how commentary buried him about the fact like he was welling up in front of the crowd going crazy for him, and it was just like, yeah, he has a legendary voice. Like, it's a voice that you just instantly recognize as soon as you hear it.
And I think every single other person that we're going to go with is still a level below him, even though it's like, the Mount Rushmore is supposed to be 4 kind of equal parts. I think it's kind of, all right, there's the Fink and then there's 3 others, kind of. There's a couple people I could see being in that range, though, for those other 3. I don't think that it's as guaranteed for any 3 other spots, but I got a feeling probably most people would end up saying Lilian Garcia would be on there.
Maybe. I mean, for tenure. But like,
as far as personal preference, she wouldn't be for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we should put a pin in her because I can see the reasoning for it, but I also don't know if I'm going to sign off on that yet.
I think she gets a bad rap. I think that some people feel like that it's not like she was terrible at her job. She did flub every now and again and had occasionally some trouble walking to the ring. But I don't think she was a bad ring announcer by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I just think that there were better people.
Yeah, I tend to prefer a little bit more of like a deeper range than obviously what she brings to the table with that. But I mean, she's in that range for me where the tenure definitely helps too.
Well, if we look for someone who does have that deep voice, although he's most famously remembered for having a very high voice at particular points, Tony Chimel.
Tony Chimel was definitely in this list for me.
Absolutely on my list.
Yeah, he was great. The rated R superstar stuff was obviously an extra little bonus. Where I don't know what it was about that made his voice crack, but once they caught wind of it
was a bit. Yeah, he would, during house shows, he would really over the top introduce John Cena, and Edge would bully him into saying, "No, introduce my name special." So he would try, and then his voice would crack as a way to knock the heel Edge, and then they just started doing it on TV because why the fuck not?
And it ended up just being a thing where, when Edge comes back, he ends up getting him to come back and announce him and all. I love what Tony Chimel brought to the dance with that. And yeah, I don't know what he necessarily did backstage. I know he was involved in other things too, with like setting up the ring and whatnot. But
he was an employee forever with that company.
Yeah. When they released him, that was one of those big shocking, like, you got rid of Chimel? Really? It always seemed like he was cool. But definitely somebody that I would sign off on if everybody wants to lock him in.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think he's the one. He's the one that people will most, alongside Lilian Garcia and the Fink, the one that's probably the most memorable for people.
I would argue another one that is possibly a lock. I mean, he would be on my Mount Rushmore, so I don't know if you guys would agree or disagree. That's kind of the whole point of this discussion. But even though he is now currently synonymous with AEW, I would put Justin Roberts in that group.
At this point, I think Justin Roberts has called so many iconic moments in wrestling that you should probably put him on. But I think there might be more people that may be deserving, but we'll see. But I can see the argument for Justin Roberts, absolutely.
I would say, obviously, with all due respect to both Lilian Garcia and Tony Chimel, I think Justin Roberts is the best ring announcer they've had since the Fink.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of just the voice and the projection.
Consistency, too. Like, he doesn't really flub.
Like, I prefer him in AEW just because he is allowed to have a lot more creative license with the way that he announces people, which I think he enjoys. And I think that comes across more now that he's been in AEW for a while. But yeah, his time in WWE, he was a very strong ring announcer. He got Daniel Bryan fired.
not by his announcing, but by his when he's getting choked.
I also on a more serious note, I remember the stuff that he wrote about with his friendship
isn't he the
with
actual
Conor
guy
McCain
responsible for Conor's cure, in a way? Because he was the actual person who got Conor backstage and got him to meet Stephanie and all that.
No, Stephanie did that after she invented women's wrestling.
Yeah, you're right. My apologies.
That was the next on her to-do list. Yeah, so I think that I don't necessarily to say these log if we've got other people to discuss. To be fair, that's kind of like the 4 people I came prepared with, because listen, you're not going to put Samantha Irvin or like, I don't know, Mike Rome is good, and Greg Hamilton was good.
Greg Hamilton, he was good. I liked him with the best in the world stuff.
But it's just like they're not like
not iconic.
Names. They're not iconic or household names.
I do want to mention a few others that I do feel are household names in wrestling, even though, like, you know, going back into the 80s and maybe even the territories, Gary Michael Capetta, who did a lot of calls for early WWF and the NWA. He probably is most famous for being the guy who did the "This is Sting," and then, you know, Tony Schiavone does it every Wednesday night now. Dave Pinzer as well, great commentator, great ring announcer, love that voice. He's still working today in Impact, but he's most famous for WCW.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, that would be if somebody said, what's the voice of WCW outside of like the commentary, as far as like the ring announcer, I picture Pinzer.
Oh, wait a minute. We should probably talk about Michael Buffer.
That's the other guy that I had on my list, because I had written down, like, obviously there's, you know, Francesca Brown, and there's Samantha Irving and JoJo Offerman.
Who's Francesca Brown?
The NXT UK announcer, the one that looks kind of like a mix between like Katy Perry and British Bulldogs.
Congratulations on being the only person to know that.
Yeah, you know, I make my lists at the end of the year, but yeah, she's not in the company anymore since NXT UK folded. But you know, like, like Irving right now, or Irvine. Now I'm blanking on her name. She's having a lot of fun with the Imperium group. She's really loving the Ludwig Kaiser and Gunther. No.
Yeah, like, she's trying. I like that. I think she can become one of those voices.
But even like somebody like JoJo, who, yeah, she did her job fine, is not hitting any kind of iconic thing. And I like Mike Rome a lot. I think he's very solid, but he's just kind of there. And Greg Hamilton was sort of the same. He was damn good, but just sort of there. And then you get into somebody like a Michael Buffer, who's never really there, but he is the most iconic ring announcer in the history of anything. And they did bring him in here and there for some special occasions, like the 2008 Royal Rumble, where he kind of did a shit job, to be perfectly honest, where for some reason he didn't want to say the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. He just said the Heartbreak Kid HBK. And
so I was there. He knew that he meant to say the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, but I think he got confused between HBK and Heartbreak Kid and just thought, oh, maybe his name's Heartbreak Kid. One of my favorites, though. And let's be honest, is there any better big fight announcer than Michael Buffer?
No, that's why WCW hired him for years and years and years, just to be the ring announcer for the main event of every show.
And it works. And it was a huge part of their presentation.
Mm-hmm. But
he might be the greatest announcer of all time, just across sports.
Yeah. As much as that is the case, I wouldn't WWE Mount Rushmore him, because of the fact that he is more synonymous for things outside of it. And it's not like he came in for every pay-per-view like they did in WCW, or that he, you know, went through like a 3-year stint where he was there in WWE all the time. He's just the most iconic guy that they brought in for a couple guest spots here and there.
I'll always shout him out, though. I mean, like, let's get rid of Rumble is a thing that people regularly said at one point in time just because of how he said it. So, Buffer's great.
Any other names that we're kind of forgetting about on the best side? Because we could talk about the worst, but...
I mean, WWE... No, I don't think so. I don't think there's anybody that we haven't mentioned that at least I can recall being a ring announcer of any extent, that was there for an extensive period of time or of any renown.
Because, most of them are like, hey, Jamie Keys was doing the announcing. Does anybody remember? Yeah. No. Like, Devin Taylor or somebody did in NXT. Okay. Alicia Taylor in NXT right now. She's fine.
I think she's good.
But she's, she's not hitting Justin Roberts levels, or, she's currently not like anywhere in the same range as like a Tony Chimel or anything,
I'll say this. The three they have right now, Irvin, Taylor, and Rome, are solid names that could, if they stay around long enough, could become iconic, but they have to stick around long enough.
I think that they need some signature element to them too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can do an impression of the Fink. You have to like kind of almost like put like a sock in your throat kind of thing, like the, cold toss, that kind of thing. But Roberts has like the John Cena, the John Moxley. That's pretty much like his signature sound. And Chimel's got the Rated R Superstar, and Lilian, of course, was like a legitimate singer. So even though they brought in a couple people here and there, like Lauren Mayhew, shout out to her. I don't think I've ever brought her up on a podcast in the past like 10 years. Like Mayhew was a singer, and she could have done a great job if they would have kept her a little bit longer, but she didn't get a chance to incorporate that in anything. Lillian's had moments like singing the national anthem and doing America the Beautiful and everything, and being that type of fixture in the company. Whereas somebody like, Mike Room, like he's just been there to announce.
I think there's one name that I've just thought of that we are forgetting. I don't know whether we will end up putting him onto this as well, but Ricardo Rodriguez.
But it's worth bringing him up though, because
he's really good.
He is a ring announcer, and for that matter, I'm going to bring up another name eventually, but let's stick on the Ricardo thing. Ricardo Rodriguez was not, of course, announcing other people, but he was a ring announcer for Alberto Del Rio. He was an intricate part of that character. He did his job well. I mean, he was the most fun part of watching a Del Rio match, arguably. Everybody would just be singing along with him, like, carrying on that same pitch. It's worth bringing up. I don't know.
I thought it was very good. He had a very good... Obviously, because he was speaking in Spanish, you couldn't tell exactly what he was saying, but he put a lot of emphasis into the Alberto Del Rio, and I completely agree with you. He was the best part of that gimmick.
I think when they took... Because we've crapped on Del Rio a lot, but like when they took the cars and Rodriguez away from Del Rio, they killed that character.
Mm-hmm.
And Ricardo was great.
Speaking of that, though, just because I feel like it's kind of worth talking about, Mr. Kennedy.
Oh, yeah, he was his own ring announcer, and now he has become a ring announcer.
A boxing ring announcer, isn't he? Yeah.
I kind of want them to bring him back as just like a ring announcer.
I don't know if it would work.
I think, yeah, it's one of those things that I could see it happening, and it might be fun. I have a feeling that him as a ring announcer would start to overshadow the people that he was announcing. Like, holy shit, that's Mr. Kennedy, and there's just like you'll actually just concentrate on that rather than the people that he's actually announcing.
Maybe at first, but I think people eventually would just end up being like, oh, okay. And then if they ever wanted to do some kind of an angle where the person's mad at the ring announcer, that they could actually like have him take a bump or something,
It might be fun. And Kennedy, talk about entrances that were great. That was so much fun when he first did the whole, I hail from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I love that.
And on that same, kind of trajectory, obviously he's not going to go on the Mount Rushmore of ring announcers, but it's worth talking about him. Paul Heyman. He's the ring announcer for Brock Lesnar for all these years, essentially.
Mm.
And that was a huge part of getting the crowd invested and having them engaged. And I mean, everybody does the impersonation of the Brock Lesnar that he would do. He did his job better than the actual ring announcers, to the point that people would just be like, all right, just give him the microphone and he'll do the announcing.
Yeah, you've always had characters like that do it on a temporary basis. I mean, you had like Armando Estrada do it for Umaga for a while. Well, so yeah, there's every now and again there will be characters that do the ring announcing for one particular superstar. I don't know if any, unless there was one that was like super iconic and had done it for years and years, and Heyman is actually probably the best example of it. I don't think they would merit going on the Mount Rushmore, though.
I would say this. I don't know if you guys are open to this idea. We already just mentioned 4 names. Character ring announcers, a separate Mount Rushmore list. Estrada, Rodriguez, Kennedy, and Heyman.
I'm not against it.
No, I'd be cool. I'd be cool with that. I don't know. Is there one better than Estrada?
There might be.
That was just the name that I thought of off the top of my head, but I can't think of any other ones not immediately, but there might be someone else.
Let's see if I can bring up a list of all ring announcers in the history of pro wrestling or something. Currently not seeing. I mean, there's some names on here that are just like the ones we talked about before. There's, Justin Roberts. There's, no, I'm not seeing any that are like the character based ones. At least in WWE. I mean, there's some people like Christy Hemme was doing the announcing for the Rock and Rave Infection and TNA, and
she became the actual. Yeah, she became just the ring announcer after that point.
Yeah, currently, I'm not seeing any other ones that would fit that bill, because they're either they announced like they did something separately like that, or I mean, there's a lot of names on this professional wrestling announcers list, but then that's just incorporating commentary teams and all that. Oh, I guess you could maybe classify Road Dogg.
Yeah, that would be above Estrada for me.
Yeah, that'd definitely go ahead of us.
I didn't think about that until coming across this, even though it was last night that he was doing it. But, I mean, Road Dogg would introduce the New Age Outlaws and everything. And he definitely would be above Estrada on that.
Yeah, I think those 4 then would make the most sense.
Yeah.
So then for the Mount Rushmore, in general, it would be Chimel,
Fink, maybe
Fink, Garcia,
and Roberts.
And yeah,
I'd say Justin Roberts is there.
Do you guys think that there's anybody that's worth on the worst?
I can't think of bad ring announcer, or at least not one they had for.
I can think of irrelevant ring announcers. Like for some reason, the name Lena Yada comes into my mind.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is most of the people that are really bad, they don't last. So yeah, I'm sure that
Brandy, listen, I'm sorry, I love Brandy Rhodes. I did not like Brandy Rhodes as a ring announcer.
And they're all kind of on the same plateau. Like, I don't remember 9 out of 10 of the NXT generic, you take a good-looking woman and you put her in the ring with a microphone and say that she's an announcer types. I actually don't remember some of these names at all. Joe McHugh, Frank Trzynazowski or whatever. I don't even know how to pronounce that name.
I've never heard of him.
Norm Kimber.
Norm.
Lance Wright, Freddie Miller, Bill Anderson. I couldn't tell you what Mike McGurk sounded like, but yeah.
I think you could. If you heard it, you'd
maybe
know.
Yeah, like, I mean, the worst ones aren't really memorable. At least as far as I can think of. So that might be something worth picking up in the discussion in the comments below. If you guys have any suggestions, you're like, oh, you guys don't remember that this one was really bad or something, then yeah, maybe. But I personally can't think of anybody that I would put on there as like a guaranteed worst. Nobody stands out to me. So let's switch over to, let's go interviewers. Because commentators, I think we got a lot more discussion points we could do. We could probably knock out interviewers a little bit easier. These are, of course, the ones that if we're going to lock in a name, we know one of them that we're locking in for sure is Mean Gene Okerlund.
Probably wait on it. Yeah, it's either you get him out of the way or you wait on him. Mean Gene is maybe the best presentation voice I've ever heard in the history of wrestling. He's got that old-timey radio voice. It's, that people don't sound like that anymore.
The way that he would say WWF, I still don't know how he could just roll that off.
He's so good. And then when you think about, he was able to transition that into, becoming one of the people who also helped WCW improve their reputation just by being there. He basically became Hulk Hogan's personal interviewer to a point where it was whenever Hogan's on the show, Gene has to be on the show. I love Mean Gene. He's the greatest of all time.
And that package too is a thing that people sometimes forget about. The whole, let me tell you something, Mean Gene, that doesn't happen without Mean Gene.
Yeah, I mean, even Flair did it with the mean, by God, Gene. Nobody does that with ring announcers, and that I think is something to talk about. How, they were also a part of the show when WWF got made into a cartoon. Mean Gene was a part of the cartoon. These people were a part of the experience, and now it's just guy with mic.
Mm-hmm. What's the character or the interactions or anything with a Cyrus Schreiber?
Yeah, they're fleshy mic stands.
Yeah.
And essentially there to ask someone a question, and that person cuts an interview that they could just be cutting on their own, just a promo. There's no sense of interaction or engagement between them and the person they're talking to.
Yeah, Mean Gene used to ask questions, and then they would get a response, and then he would respond to that, and he would call the heels out on something and be well, what do you mean? This is what happened instead, and then it'll be shut up, Mean Gene. That's not what we're talking about today, and
they would talk to him rather than talk to the camera.
Right. Like an actual interview.
Yeah.
Kind of novel idea that the interviewers did interviews as interviewers.
And it's stand naturally rather than side on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say I saw some character forming in Mackenzie Mitchell. She has a good back and forth with Grayson Waller. They have a banter instead of it being, okay, you stop talking now and I will cut my promo to this camera.
If we're talking modern day Mount Rushmore, Mackenzie is easily on the list. She is the best ring announcer not ring announcer.
She's one of the only ones I could put on the list.
She is the only one that's actually coming across like a human being a lot of the time. Whether it's something as simple as when she just says, hey, Vic, Wade, and Beth, back to you, or Vic and Wade, back to you, or whatever, whatever
right,
it might be.
Instead of staring off into the distance like some android.
Which, some of that's not their fault because they're instructed that that's what they need to do. I'm sure that if the actual interviewer is a Caleb Braxton or somebody, I'm sure that they would rather not do that, but they're told this is what you need to do by somebody like a Kevin Dunn or someone.
I think we need to praise Paul Heyman again, just because you said Caleb Braxton, and they have a banter, and it makes Kayla appear more human, the way that she has a banter with Paul Heyman. But I mean, honestly, when we're talking about the levels of Mean Gene Okerlund, I don't even know who else I could put on the list that isn't from that era. Sean Mooney's going on my list, John
Mooney's definitely a name worth talking about.
It's fantastic.
He's the backup guy during that type of era. And of course, when Mean Gene's not there anymore, then, people get moved around and things get changed and you get other people, and they had plenty of other people that, popped in for guest stints and everything too. But Sean Mooney is one of those main names that I had on my list. I also had Todd Pettingill on my list. Now, he was ridiculous, but in an era where that was the type of energy that they were going for. And he knew what he was doing. Like, he got the stuff down. He was able to interview people the way that he was supposed to. And he was able to carry some segments that were really awkward just by doing his job and whatever, to the point that he became synonymous with In Your House. And they brought him back as being like, hey, look, it's not quite In Your House with that Todd Pettingill. There are other people that might potentially overtake some of these other names, but he's somebody that I was writing him down as like, yeah, maybe. The only one I had down as a guarantee was Mean Gene, and then the rest was sort of, we'll see.
From a similar era, maybe slightly moving on to the Attitude Era, and probably should mention him because he's not going to, unfortunately, be mentioned in a WWE commentary list because he is currently one of the greatest commentators going right now. Kevin Kelly.
On my list, too.
Yeah.
Kind of really, a follow-up to Sean Mooney in a lot of ways, in my mind.
This was in the era where Rock was having fun with everybody who was interviewing him, and Kevin Kelly was one of the first people to really face the brunt of that from The Rock, like being forced to pick his nose in front of him and stuff like that.
Hermie.
Oh yeah.
I'm just gonna say Hermie. I'm not gonna get into Hermie, but Kevin Kelly, a great professionalism too. Like, he could interview Bret Hart. And I think with a lot of these names, you also have to go into like who they were speaking to, and that also helps because Kevin Kelly is interviewing Stone Cold and The Rock and Bret and The Undertaker and Shawn, Mean Gene, Hogan, Savage, Andre. One of the reasons we're not going to say a Todd Grisham is because it's like, yeah, he had that great interview with Chris Masters. It's like sometimes it's also a byproduct of the era they're in. But
hang on a sec. I will mention someone from that era that I feel like goes heavily underrated as a great interviewer, and that's Maria Canelis.
Oh, yes, because when you're talking about character,
she was fantastic as an interview. Her whole gimmick was ditzy blonde, but she was the best ditzy blonde there's ever been. That ever ditzied blonde. That was just.
She ditzied a blonde like no.
Yeah, she was so her interview segments were funny, and the people interacted with her well because she would always say something either dumb or inappropriate or something like that, and they'd have to bounce off of that. Like, she wanted to make herself. Again, it's similar maybe to this Kenny thing, but she wanted to make sure that she was coming across as a quote unquote star, or at least someone that was worth paying attention to. And
she's doing her job too, because they're going to tell you, okay, go out there and be an airhead, be the best airhead you can be, and she was.
I thought she was excellent. I mean, she has loads of these segments where, she would just. I think she got spat on by Collie at some point, but Collie was spitting on everyone and would spit the apple on her, and the part where she gets doused in chocolate milk and stuff like that with Eugene and William Regal's celebration. It's just yeah, she was there as eye candy as well, but she used this platform and character to actually build a big reputation for herself. She's still working today and is very well known, but she's a prominent name, and that all started with interviewing. So I think that for the era she was in, I think she was the standout among those interviewers.
Yeah, I mean, there's everybody can name a long list, not to crap on the names, but like a Megan Morant right now is in that territory of just somebody holding a microphone. And if you're holding the microphone and whatever, I'm sure that there's still elements of it that's you got to be good at your job. You can't be flubbing over your words and everything. But somebody like a Maria comes in and incorporates character into it, they become a lot more memorable, and you just have more fun in their segments. And ultimately, it's entertainment. It shouldn't be boring. For that matter, too, as a little guest stint thing, Helms. He's doing a gimmick where he's pulling a Clark Kent. He's a reporter, and at the same time, no, I don't know what you're talking about with this Hurricane character. It's not me.
Yeah, I'm just thinking other people from that kind of era as well. Rob's favorite, Mark Lloyd. from the Paul Heyman
Oh,
SmackDown
God,
podcast.
man.
You hated him for some reason. I don't know why. He was just innocuous.
He was so bland. Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, began the era of like everybody just so bland and they're just people with microphones that you can interchange, and it just wasn't great, you know?
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, Funaki was SmackDown's #1 announcer. He was great.
He absolutely was.
Yeah, I mean, I like Funaki. I mean, from that sort of time, like that ruthless aggression time, you had Jonathan Coachman. Coach is Coach.
Well, Coach, I mean, first of all, he parlayed it into a character where he became like Eric Bischoff's henchman, but also, you talk about stuff with The Rock. I think the Say Your Prayers on your knees at WrestleMania 18 is one of the funniest things ever done by a ring announcer. Coach is good.
You also could, again, it's part of the crossover thing, but Lilian Garcia was a prominent interviewer at that point in time as well, and basically she suffered sexual harassment every single week from The Rock. It felt like
different era, everybody.
Yeah.
As far as some of the more modern names, we've recently.
Speaking of somebody who suffered harassment every week, can't not say Michael Cole. We will talk about him as a commentator.
I was going to eventually bring him up.
I mean, he suffered a very specific kind of harassment from one particular wrestler in one particular bathroom.
That Heidenreich thing is an infamous interview. Like, you don't want to have that on your resume, but it ends up being something that's memorable. So Cole's underrated in a lot of different ways, I think. And he would be potentially one of those names I would consider for that, because he was really good at doing that. Although I think that he's probably going to catch some heat for this. I think he's better as a commentator than an interviewer. But when he did do the interviewing, he was this like template that like other people follow and don't do as well. You know what I mean?
I would say he's
that gets insulted by the person he's interviewing.
Yeah, kind of. And somebody who could get the point across and do his job and, be kind of a blank slate, but he had a way to making it not as boring as some of the other people that have followed suit.
Remember Bob Holly at WrestleMania?
Yeah. I'm going to break your ass in half, you little shithead. It's one of the best lines.
Jesus.
That's so visceral.
I mean, it was him, and then it got, I don't know how you describe it, as like a devolution or something like that towards Josh Matthews.
Yeah.
He was essentially next guy with frosted tips. Interview people.
He passed the frosted tips down like a baton, But on like a more modern side, somebody who is one of the main reasons why we're doing this podcast at this time is Kathy Kelly. Because we now have Kathy Kelly back. And we, from pretty much the start, when she came on board in NXT, everybody on this podcast and everybody, surrounding, we're all just like, oh, I like this Kathy Kelly girl. She is personable. She seems to know her shit. She is, obviously, there's the eye candy aspect. Of course, they hire people for that reason. It's a portion of it. So, yeah, she's attractive, which isn't a guarantee. It's not like you have to be. Like, me, Gene Okerland's not getting anybody on this panel to be like, look at that. But Kathy Kelly was having fun with it. And she was able to become like the 5th member of the Undisputed Era in a lot of ways. And to the point that when she gets announced to be coming back, I haven't seen a single negative thing about the idea of her coming back from anybody on the internet. Everybody's like, oh my God, cool, Kathy Kelly's back. For an interviewer, that says a lot. It's not a superstar coming back. It's an interviewer who was primarily in NXT.
I think she also represents the golden era of NXT, and people are just happy to see that return in any way. Kathy Kelly, if we're talking about like modern, she would definitely go on my Mount Rushmore. She really is fantastic.
And on a similar wavelength, Renee Young.
Oh, Renee Young is absolutely on this list. In any era, Renee Young is the closest thing WWE had gotten to an iconic person as a Mean Gene.
Renee is like she was absolutely bursting with the seams of personality, and it took her a while to get started. But I think it was the Cole and JBL show that really kind of unlocked that other side of her. That like she does have character, and she can be more than just mic stand, and she can. And then Talking Smack really took that to a whole nother level where she was actively involved in progressing stories. Like she had that, I say feud, but she was a big part in that Maurice, Miz, Daniel Bryan like feud, and like elevating the Miz's status up as well. Like, and also getting involved with the Dean Ambrose side of things because she was with Dean Ambrose at that point, obviously still is, but like that was when he was heavily feuding with the Miz quite a lot over the IC title and stuff like that. So, she was the best they ever had after Mean Gene, and so would definitely be on the main Mount Rushmore for this.
I mean, they tried a lot of Pretty Girl holds microphone, and Renee Young. She's the only one who nailed it.
It's one of those things, like they have people that are doing. I mean, you talk about Kavi Kelly. Kavi Kelly is of that mold, and I'm not saying that she's not bad or anything. She's definitely very good, but she's a level below Renee Young in the same way that Charlie Caruso and Kayla Braxton are a level below Renee Young. But they're like they're the standout ones because everybody that surrounds them is just vacant robots. And so it kind of helps them stand out because, this planet actually has a personality. They installed the personality chip onto this one. And so they're actually able to do something a little bit more. So that does help them stand out a bit more. But I think Renee Young is the kind of catalyst of that era of, we have to have at least one that knows what they're doing properly.
Yeah, she would probably get all 3 votes from us, right?
And how many? Nobody else transitioned into, hey, why don't you do Raw for 3 hours on commentary, Renee? Why don't you host the panel? You can literally do whatever you want because you're that good. She's on the Mount Rushmore.
The panelist side of things, it's got more crossover here, I think, with the interviewer more than it does with commentating. But, we've gotten some spots with like Charlie Caruso you mentioned, and they've had like Sam Roberts, for instance, be an interviewer, but primarily a panelist. And then somebody like a Peter Rosenberg, same thing. He's done some interviews, primarily pre-show panelist type. And Renee Young fit into the panelist thing, I think arguably even better than the interviewer. But that doesn't mean that she was bad at an interviewer. She's got 3 votes here,
I mean, my question with that is, and also part of the reason why I don't really want to proceed too far down the quote-unquote panelist thing, the main reason for that being is that the pre-show panels and kickoff shows are basically vacant white noise.
Yeah,
the entirety of it, and they're not worth the hour or so they spend on it every single pay-per-view cycle. But there's a difference between the people hosting the panel and the people who are on the panel.
Yeah.
So it's like Renee Young, Charlie Caruso, Kavi Kelly, whoever they've had do that role, are not the same as your Pete Rosenberg, Sam Roberts, Booker T's, all those JBLs, all the people that they traditionally have on these panels. So that's why I can't really see like we should do a Mount Rushmore of panelists because we need to do a Mount Rushmore of people hosting panels and people who have been on the panel. And I think that's just it's an unnecessary amount of effort going into something.
Yeah, that's
something
they
that
don't put any effort into.
Nobody would really care. Yeah. And especially because it's like, okay, the panelists that are doing like the color commentary or whatever, it's JBL, Booker T, Jerry Lawler. That's the people that pop up 1,000 times. But somebody like a Matt Camp, for instance, is in that range of the broadcast personnel who does a lot of different things. He's on these Raw Talk type episodes. I'm pretty sure has done some kind of a pre-show panel, but I'm not exactly sure what to be like. Oh, it was Takeover, whatever, or like along those lines. But he can host a show like The Ultimate Show and do such a damn good job that I'm like, man, I really wish I could put him on a Mount Rushmore of something because he's so fucking good at it. But he's not an interviewer. So it's like, well, he's not backstage grabbing a microphone asking somebody to cut a promo and doing that the way that Mean Gene would, or that Renee Young would, or Kayla, or any of the people that are in that range right now. So I wouldn't put him in like the interviewer thing. Matt Camp would be the type that if we were to, which we're not going to do the Mount Rushmore of panel hosts, that would be like, all right, Renee Young, Matt Camp, etc. So shout out, mini Mount Rushmore shout out kind of to Matt Camp. But on the interviewer side of things, I think that there is a difference between like a Ryan Popola versus a Mackenzie Mitchell. And Okerlund and Young, I'm definitely good with being two of the four. The other two, I don't know. We got a couple different options.
I would say Sean Mooney and either Kathy, Kayla, or Todd Pettingill.
I don't really have any feelings towards Sean Mooney because I wasn't watching at that point in time, and I don't really know anything about Sean Mooney. I don't think I've ever seen Sean Mooney do anything on a show, so I definitely couldn't advocate for him. But you guys know better than me on that front. My choices would probably be for Maria Canelis and Jonathan Coachman, I think. Maybe Kevin Kelly as well. They'd be like the three that stand out the most to me.
Kevin Kelly, you said, or Kathy Kelly?
Kevin Kelly.
Okay, because the two Kellys, I'm like, wait, which one was this? Out of those, because realistically, that's what we're kind of working with. Let me go through this again. It was Sean Mooney, Pettingill, Kathy Kelly, Caleb Braxton. That was your four that you mentioned, Rob?
Yeah. And
then for Callum, it's Coachman, Kevin Kelly. Who was the other one?
Canelis.
Maria
Canelis.
All right, so we're working with 7 names for 2 spots.
Well, do you have any definitive that you would absolutely want to see in that spot?
Out of those, I would probably lean. I mean, I kind of look at it this way. Kathy and Kayla are on the same page, so I wouldn't pick both of those. If we picked one, I would be like, okay, it's got to be one or the other. Sean Mooney, Todd Pettingill, and Kevin Kelly are on the same page. And then Maria and Coachman are on the same page for me. I'm kind of... That's 3 spots, too, for 2. So I'm thinking maybe one of the names of Mooney, Pettingill, or Kelly. Kevin Kelly, I should say. And then either going with the Kathy or Kayla, or going with Coachman or Maria. I would probably, out of the 3, the Mooney, Pettingill, and Kevin Kelly, I'd probably lean a little bit more towards Mooney. But that's kind of ignoring the fact that I am more familiar with Pettingill. And then Kevin Kelly, and then Sean Mooney. But Mooney feels like he was a bigger name for a longer time frame. So I kind of feel like maybe he deserves it a little bit more. And then as far as Kathy versus Kayla, or doing the Coachman and Maria side,
I'd be all right with any of those 4. I'll say that.
No, I personally wouldn't go with either Kathy or Kayla, and that's, I know I was the one that mentioned Coach and Maria, so that's part of the reason why. But also the fact that they're derivatives of Renee Young, and you've got the Renee Young there.
I kind of see it that way a little bit too. Yeah, so I'd be kind of, like, I guess, a little bit more into, even if we were to double up on anything, it would probably be to double up on the Mooney, Pettingill, and Kevin Kelly thing. Or to go with somebody like Mooney, and then maybe Maria just for shits and giggles or something, or maybe to go with Coachman because he was able to transition that into some other things. I don't know, that's kind of tough. But I think I'd lean more towards either Coach or Maria instead of Kathy or Kayla.
I can live with probably going with Coach. Coach is really good.
And we could always do a B tier, you know.
Yeah. My personal preference is towards Maria, but yeah. So but I'm fine with either of those two being the 4th choice, really.
depending on who we would go with, obviously the other one would go into the B tier. If the B tier would be, say, Pettingill, Kevin Kelly, either Maria or Coach, and then one of either Kathy or Kayla.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I think I'd probably lean towards Kayla over Kathy just because she's been there longer right now. What about you, Rob?
I'd say that's fair, and she's doing great work with Paul Heyman.
Yeah, I could go with that. And then it's just Coach.
So it's just
Coach
Maria or Coach who's in A and who's in B.
I would put
Callum would lean more towards Maria.
You're saying Maria. What about you? Because I'm kind of split.
I'm kind of split.
It comes down to Coach has great segments with The Rock, but Maria's had great segments with so many people like John Cena.
Coach had more longevity.
Yeah.
So if you were to go with that aspect of it, I thought Maria was more notable for the time that she had, but then she transitioned quickly into wrestling.
I think maybe I'd go Coach because even though it's not quite fair, I guess you could say, Maria then did transition into a wrestling capacity and she was a manager.
Was only Coach, technically.
Yeah, I know, but she became more of a wrestler and then she became a manager and she did all these other things. Whereas Coach pretty much, outside of some guest spots here and there of being okay, we're going to beat the crap out of the guy who's this annoying extra person, he was still a panelist and an interviewer and a broadcast guy. So I associate Coachman more as a broadcast person than Maria. So I think I'd go Coach. And then Maria, B tier.
I'm good with that.
And then, I don't know, we have a couple names that I guess technically would be potentially C tier. Kathy Kelly, Mackenzie Mitchell, Michael Cole. Somebody else. I don't know, Funaki or something, I guess.
Funaki is still the number one out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how we rank this, okay? He's still the number one out.
Yeah. So we're not going to bother with the panelist side of things just because that's they're splitting hairs and stuff. I don't know if we would have anything for worst interviewers because, again, it's pretty much the same sort of, you take a person, give them a microphone, and then they're forgettable. So how do you really rank people that are equally bad,
We go Doc Hendricks.
Oh, I totally forgot about Doc Hendricks.
He's the mixture of the worst interviewer they've had that was also involved in arguably the most important promo in the company's history with Stone Cold, the Austin 316.
Yeah.
But yeah, he wasn't good.
Different, it's a whole different kind of ballpark when you go from being one of the fabulous Freebirds to Doc Hendricks on commentary and on the interview. All right, so let's bounce backward then to the commentary team side of things. Now, this one, there's a lot more room for debate because there are way more than 4 really good commentators that have been over the years. And some people have better roles with certain other people too. So it's not quite a matter of going with the Mount Rushmore of commentary teams, that we might be able to explore that if we end up, coming across this enough. Might be kind of worth having an extra little bit for that. But you take the right person and you pair them with the right person, it can make a big difference because certain people do not mesh well. And a great commentator and another great commentator can be 2 awful commentators if they end up being with the wrong person. We got certain teams over the years that they knew how to be a proper synergy, like Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler. They had it going on. And then you got other people who are like in AEW right now. When Taz and Excalibur,
my God.
When they go on Dark, they have so much fun together. And it's a completely different style, but it's the show that nobody fucking cares about and where everything so they can goof off and have fun. You put Taz with Jim Ross and it can be terrible. And you can put Paul Heyman on with somebody and it can be great, or it could be bad. Or you can get a Michael Cole in there and he can work really well with like a Corey Graves or a Pat McAfee. Or you can put Michael Cole with Jerry Lawler and it takes a while for them to get into the rhythm of things. So there's nuance when it comes to this, but obviously a lot of the names that we'll be discussing are the obvious names, the Gorilla and Bobby, the Marwanalos, the Gordon Solis, etc. I think it's probably a guarantee that we are putting Jim Ross on this, right?
I would say so.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the voice people think about when they just have a. If you have a clip of WWE in your head, it's likely Jim Ross is commentating it.
Especially if it's something around like that time frame of the most popular time frame in WWE.
Oh yeah, exactly.
You know,
but he was the voice that you were listening to when there were 10 million people watching an episode of Raw.
Yeah, Stone Cold is synonymous with Jim Ross. You got calls like the Hell in a Cell with Foley and everything that are just iconic. And Jim Ross right now is not doing the same work that he used to do. But then again, it's been decades and he's in a different company and he's working with a different team and, all the elements to go along with it. But Jim Ross at his peak, I don't think you could touch him.
You couldn't. I think that's why any company would want to hire him now. And, it's worked out as it's worked out in AEW, and it's been some good and some bad, but he's still Jim Ross. So he gets to pass.
What are some names that, go ahead, Cal, if you had some to pitch into.
I mean, you have to mention Jerry. Jerry Lawler has to be a Mount Rushmore guy. I know it's like, those two worked together for most of their careers, but Jerry Lawler was great.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, he's a sex pest. And that is very problematic. But he was a great heel. Like, he is the epitome of a great heel commentator.
It's like everybody that does that role, whether it's Corey Graves or whomever, is literally just trying to be either King or Bobby. And I think you have to say Jerry Lawler is one of the best color commentators of all time.
I think we're probably going to end up doing justice to separate some other things just for the sake of it, and then to go with a regular Mount Rushmore too. Like, the golden Mount Rushmore will be something that we can settle on a little bit, but I think we can do Mount Rushmore of play-by-play commentators, Mount Rushmore of color commentators, and Mount Rushmore of commentary teams, and then we can kind of settle around that. So somebody like JR and Lawler and all these, like, they're all going to funnel back into being a part of this discussion, but I think, it's agree to disagree, maybe. Obviously, let me know if you don't agree. I think we would probably put Jim Ross down for Mount Rushmore play-by-play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would probably put Jerry Lawler down for Mount Rushmore of commentary. Like, color commentary, I should say.
Of color, yeah.
Yeah. Color commentary. Let me just label that the right way. In a similar way, Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll say this, that definitely, maybe potentially for Mount Rushmore of announced teams, but I would say that Bobby Heenan is definitely Mount Rushmore of play-by-play guys. Not play-by-play, color commentary guys. Gorilla Monsoon is not Mount Rushmore of play-by-play. In fact, I think he's actually pretty bad as a commentator.
There's
not worse.
Valid argument.
He is not a. I think that he didn't really know what he was doing as much. He needed Bobby alongside him to have that level of camaraderie, and like the arguments that he had were the most entertaining part of his commentary. When he was actually, calling a match, I don't think he was up to the job.
I think that not only is that a valid discussion, but I think that we have a lot of other people that can get on that play-by-play list that won't be able to go on the other ones. And then that would be usurping a spot from Gorilla. I agree. Now, Heenan, on the commentary side, if anybody shows up Jerry Lawler, it's Heenan.
Oh, yeah. Heenan's fantastic. And it's because he was so integrated into the shows that he was on as well as a manager as well as the commentator. It means that he was super invested into everything that was going on. Like he encapsulated so much of what that time was.
Yeah,
I guess the you go ahead, Rob, before I move on.
No, it's like it's Bobby Heenan took that role and he became the best at it, so much so that, like, I've said this a few times now, but again, when WCW needed that call, they called Bobby because he's going to legitimize the company. You know, and Bobby, he kind of made the heel color commentator role something to aspire to be. Like, Jesse Ventura, who we should probably talk about at some point.
Yeah, that was who I was about to bring up as well.
Invented the role, but Bobby perfected it. Like, and he was great with literally everyone he worked with, whether it was Vince or Gorilla or Jim Ross towards the back end of his run and the beginning of JR's. Like, Bobby worked with everyone so smoothly, and then he eventually parlayed it into a relationship with, Shivani and WCW. Bobby is color commentary. And again, I'll say it, every single, whether it's Taz, Graves, they're all doing a really bad Bobby Heenan. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, they even say it. Most people say their role in color commentary is to try to live up to those people. They're trying to do a Bobby Heenan impression in a lot of ways. And some people can pull it off here and there, but most people, it ends up being like, all right, well, you're not Bobby Heenan, but you're great for this era. Or, you work really well with this guy, but you're not Bobby Heenan. Or, because Bobby Heenan was just kind of a different animal. He was super quick on his feet. Yeah. Super quick on his feet. Funny as all hell. Was able to be this comedic heel weasel in a way that it was entertaining and not irritating and annoying like other people would do here and there, where they'll just be like arguing for the heel in a way that you're like, God, I don't want to listen to this guy. He's just an asshole. Heenan ended up being fun with that role. And I mean, there's no question that he's like, I'd be arguing constantly that he has to go on the color commentary one.
I mean, he might just go on the golden overall.
Like, I mean, that's another, right. Yeah. But
like,
I do agree
Bobby is that good.
I do agree that Gorilla Monsoon probably would not be a guarantee on the play-by-play compared to some of the other people that I'd argue a little bit more for.
Yeah, I mean, Gorilla Monsoon, he's fun, right? He's got fun quips. The, oh, will you stop? And the, oh, you fell on the external occipital protuberance. Like, he's got the lines, but it all really is based around working with Bobby, working with Jesse. So I wouldn't say he's Mount Rushmore on his own.
I wouldn't put Ventura on the Mount Rushmore of color commentary, I don't think.
I would.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know anybody else that's done it outside of Lawler and Heenan as well as he has in WWE.
Might be worth it.
I look at the others. So when I think of the other people that we would potentially talk about for the color commentary role, and I want Corey Graves to be as far away from this conversation as possible, because he does not merit being on the Mount Rushmore for color commentary. Because the other options are Taz, who's great. I would say that you're looking at JBL, who was actually, as much as I despise him as a human being, I think that he was actually pretty damn good as a commentator, at least with the first run that he had with Michael Cole.
I was a big fan of JBL on commentary for that part, yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually a name that I was like, yeah, he probably would be on it for me.
I would say Paul Heyman.
Another one that's a good chance.
Jim Cornette.
Absolutely.
Potential one. I think they're the main ones that stand out to me as like the ones that put. I mean, you could put Randy Savage. I don't think Randy really fitted commentary. Like he overshadowed it a bit much with just his voice is too much, really. Like, it's good to have an iconic voice, but his voice was just a bit too much for the the thing, and I don't think he really got commentary that well. So
yeah, I wouldn't
I can't think of anyone else.
I
think Pat McAfee's too. It's been too little time for Pat McAfee. Wade Barrett's been far too little time, even though I both think they both have potential to be on this in years and years if they keep going strong. But so the 4 or 5 that I mentioned before, I think, are the standout choices.
There are people here and there that I kind of put in the same bracket as like Barrett and McAfee, where I like them a lot, but it's just they didn't do it long enough for me to really say that they justify that. Like, I did like Samoa Joe on color commentary, but Mount Rushmore? No.
Punk.
Yeah, I mean, Punk had his good moments. Piper had his good moments that were good. I mean, when they used him in certain capacities, I know a lot of people disagree. I liked Matt Stryker, but a lot of people don't.
I'm marking out, bro.
Yeah. I liked here and there when we would hear William Regal on color commentary, but I wouldn't associate him and some of the other people, like, you know, on this list. If you were to say, like, oh, what do you picture the Mount Rushmore of color commentary? I wouldn't picture somebody like a William Regal or a Renee Young. I mean, she was on commentary and she was essentially a color commentator. Somebody like a Byron Saxton is really weird. Because Byron's like neither.
Yeah, he's the third voice, and that third spot is weird.
Yeah, he was weird. The fact that he was a wrestler, so he does offer that perspective, but he was so nothing as a wrestler that he kind of feels like he was just more of a broadcast guy.
And he would call maneuvers, but at the same time, he would banter back and forth with the other people. So he was almost just like the hybrid of them. And yeah, I like Byron Saxton for what he was able to do, but I wouldn't Mount Rushmore him. And then you get a guy like oh God, what's his name now? He was in English in WWE. I can't remember what his name is now.
Matthew Raywald.
Yeah, like he, for these like 205 Live type shows, was fun, but you're not going to Mount Rushmore somebody who was on 205 Live for that, because holy shit, who's going to pick him over a Jesse Ventura, you know? So it's just like, there's discussion points like that need to be, you know, brought up. And unfortunately, some of those names do get lost a little bit in the shuffle because they haven't been there long enough, like a Pat McAfee. Maybe down the line, he ends up being a Mount Rushmore type guy, but for being only a part of this for a few months, I don't think we can put him that high quite yet.
I would agree with that.
Booker T is a color commentating guy that
we'll talk about that when we get on to worst
one of the best of the worst. I mean, like,
he is.
Good Lord,
he has a more of a range of, like, you know, time that he's spent on commentary than a lot of other ones. But yeah, Booker T has never been good on commentary, and tonight we're gonna get to hear him in his
Ducky, you know, onto NXT
to see what happens when he does on NXT, where he's going to be even less familiar with the people, and that's going to be probably a lot of fun, him working with Vic.
I think his head is going to explode when he sees Nikita Lyons.
Yeah, that's what we're all looking forward to.
So on like the color commentary side, we talked about a lot of those names and all, and we'll probably, you know, settle on some when we go back and, you know, actually kind of figure out the Mount Rushmore of this. But on the play-by-play side, somebody like a Michael Cole, I would argue way more than a Gorilla Monsoon. And I know that Callum doesn't really love that idea.
It's just for the fact the longevity aspect of it. The fact that he's been the voice of WWE for nearly 2 decades. Yeah, closing in on 2 decades now. Like, yeah, he merits being on it. I know that I have been against him in the past, and realistically, the fact that he has gotten better in the last few months does give me the impression of he was very, very badly hurt by having a geriatric man shouting in his ear for 3 hours every night.
Forcing him to say what he needed to say, because,
yeah,
you know, now that it's been more relaxed, he's been able to just have a little bit more fun with it.
But then I do also add to the fact that I think having the tenure that he does have, maybe he could have, just said things and dealt with the consequences afterwards. But he's a good employee. Let's put it that way.
And if we're talking about iconic stuff, like Mean Gene has this iconic voice, and somebody like Howard Finkel has this iconic voice and whatever. As much as it catches heat and people hate it, you got Michael Cole-isms. You've got It's Boss Time. You've got vintage whatever. You got, Michael Cole is a noteworthy name in that regard, where he's even the template for other people that followed suit in the same kind of way that we're talking about with the broadcast interview side of things. Michael Cole set this standard that we ended up getting with people like a Vic Joseph today, or Tom Phillips, or somebody that I'm going to bring up on the worst commentators list, Todd Grisham. The clean cut, generic, brown haired white guy doing the commentary, like a Josh Matthews, like a, anybody on that list. There's so many different variations of it, but nobody of them does it as good as Michael Cole does. So if you're looking for archetypes and being like, okay, the Jim Ross is this type of old school guy, and he brings up, this guy's got a hell of a grip and he's tougher than the $2 steak and whatever. You got the Michael Cole is that modern incarnation of that, to the point that as much as I like Vic Joseph, I would definitely not put Vic over Michael Cole. He's fitting into the same little niche.
Yeah, Cole has to be on it, just like longevity alone.
What do you guys think about Mauro Ranallo on that play-by-play list?
Yes, I would say so.
He was there long enough for me to justify it, and I think he was so much fucking fun.
Yeah,
he knew what he was talking about. He to the point that they recorded his reactions to things.
Yeah, we all loved that era of NXT, and the fact is he was a big part of that. And of course, people will point to the fact that he did overuse pop culture references.
Yeah, he'd be like, "Oh, he's gonna pull out the Infinity Gauntlet or whatever." Like, what? Come on.
But when you talk about just pure passion for what they're seeing in front of him, no one got that across in the same, basically akin to JR in the way that Mauro Ranallo did on play-by-play.
I'm just gonna say it. I think the hate that Mauro Ranallo got towards the end of his run with NXT has to do with the combined, first of all, NXT fatigue with certain elements of the brand, and the fact that because AEW was around, it was no longer the shiny toy. So people felt comfortable crapping on things that were previously beloved. I think Mauro was fantastic.
Mauro would be a Mount Rushmore play-by-play guy for me.
I mean, he was, what was he there, a year? And he got all those catchphrases in, Mamma Mia, the endless pop culture references, which, while maybe overused, were fun, It
was kind of interesting to see where he would do it. If there was like a big movie that was coming out that week, like The Batman or something, it was like, okay, is he going to incorporate the Batman in here? And then out of nowhere, it would be like the match you weren't expecting. He would just be like, it's such and such, it's like this. And you're like, there you go. He mentioned, I don't know, fucking Harry Potter or something. A couple other names here, just, quickly touch upon now that I'm bringing up this actual list of other people and everything. Obviously, some names that get lost in the shuffle that we just, Lita did some commentary. Yeah. Yeah. Captain Lou Albano did some commentary here and there. Yeah. Did you know that he was the, what was it, the commissioner?
They made him the commissioner?
Ted DiBiase wasn't great on commentary. DiBiase wasn't good on commentary, despite being a great promo.
He was fine. He was like in that era where like Wrestling Challenge is dying and we're shifting over towards Raw being the A show. He would do a lot of shows with Gorilla Monsoon, and he was inoffensive.
You got a lot of people who they could talk for promos, so they could be a good manager, but they put them on commentary. It doesn't quite work the same.
Hang on a minute. Why the fuck haven't we actively sat here and spoken about Vince McMahon?
I was waiting. I was waiting on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the list of other people who could classify as play-by-play commentators. So you have Tom Phillips, who's good, but he's a Michael Cole knockoff, and Vic Joseph, who is another Michael Cole knockoff, and Todd Grisham, who we're not going to mention, or at least not in any positive light.
Well,
anyway.
yeah.
Jonathan Coachman, who again, he's not a good commentator, so again, I don't know if he'll go on the worst, but he's definitely not going on the best. You're not going to put Doc Hendricks again into this. I don't know whether he classes as play-by-play or color commentary. Kevin Kelly's an awesome commentator, but he only really found his feet in Ring of Honor and New Japan, so you wouldn't mention him for a WWE-based one. And then literally the only person that's left really, outside of the really, really bad ones who will go on the worst Mount Rushmore that we will discuss in a little while, is Vince McMahon.
Who might be the number one guilty pleasure commentator in the history of pro wrestling.
I would argue he could be on the Mount Rushmore of positive just because way that
he is in my eyes.
The way that he did commentary was so like ridiculous. Like, I mean, I actually I showed some clips to Caroline recently. Because in passing, I had mentioned something about commentary and Vince McMahon or whatever, and she was like, "Oh, he did commentary," and I was like, "Oh yeah, he was terrible, and it was great because he would do these like mannerisms where he didn't know what the move was called, so he would just say, "What a maneuver," and I found that there's compilations on YouTube of him saying "What a maneuver," and of course we've joked about it in the past, the high pitch that he would get where he's, welcome everyone to the... And it's like, that's not your voice, dude. You also just go... So you can't do both at the same time and not sound like you are going through this, like, complete transformation, like you're fucking hulking out or something. And I love listening to old school Vince McMahon commentary, especially Royal Rumbles, because of his propensity to do this, like, okay, the person is... relatively teetering over the top rope. That's it. He's out. He's been eliminated. No, never mind. It's like, you're going so far. The pinfall count is at a 1, and you're saying the match is over. And then when he kicks out a 2, no. It's not.
No, sorry. That was only 2.
Like, he's going for the pinfall at 1. That's it. He's got a 2. It's over. He is great. He's terrible. But I love it.
I think that sums up a lot of the way people feel about Vince McMahon in many ways.
And a good way to call that attention to this, like, where does he fit in this? I don't know if you can call him a play-by-play commentator or a color commentator in the same way that somebody like Joey Styles did both.
He's a play-by-play guy. The thing about Vince that I've really grown to appreciate when it comes to his commentary over the years, he's telling the story in the way that he thinks we're supposed to take it. So when you look at it through that lens, it's also very interesting.
He's more of a narrator than a commentator, yeah.
Right, and he started for his dad, so he has that like old school commentating over like Bruno matches and Backlund matches, but he's also just setting the tone for the entire Hogan era practically, but being the lead voice of superstars and all that. And I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but at the end of our podcasts, it's Vince McMahon's voice doing the countdown. Like,
specifically, it's from WrestleMania 12 is the clip.
I mean, that's got to be Kane. Like, does anything set up Kane's introduction better than, oh, that's got to be Kane. It's Kane. Like, Vince McMahon's great. I would argue he needs to be on the Mount Rushmore.
It's just Ken crawling hell.
No, as I say, as much as I think that he's a questionable character, even more questionable than Jerry Lawler, who we're going to put on the color commentator one, I think that he is the best fit for the fourth person on the play-by-play one alongside Cole, Ranallo, and Jim Ross.
I would certainly.
He's better than Monsoon.
I would rather listen to him than Monsoon in like a one-on-one capacity. I've never liked Joey Styles on commentary. For anybody who's wondering about that, I don't like the oh my god. Yeah, and he just, I don't know, it was just irritating for my personal tastes. And then you get people like, Nigel McGuinness and Andy Shepherd, who are just, they're kind of there. And
go ahead, do the Andy Shepherd impression.
the most lackluster Andy Shepherd impression in the world, which is just to flail my arms and go, I'm Andy Shepherd. I like him though. Like,
he's good. He's good.
It might sound like I'm crapping on him, but no, I like Andy Shepherd. I actually hope that they continue to keep him on the payroll in some fashion. I don't know what they would necessarily do, but at the very least, when they do NXT Europe, I want to see him return. Somebody that we should mention the name of, but he doesn't apply in this list because this is a WWE list, although he was in WWE for a little bit, is Tony Schiavone. And Tony Schiavone, you don't think WWE, you think WCW, you think AEW at this point now. He was a commentator in WWE, but of course, he did not reach the same level as when he goes to WCW, and he's the voice of that brand. And if we got into the WCW side, my God, we'd be talking about Tenay, and we'd be talking about Mark Madden and all these other kinds of people.
Mark Madden on the negative side.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Tenay was great. And Tenay's like, he's the voice of TNA. He's the one that you think of when you think of TNA.
You think we got a quick WCW Mount Rushmore of positive commentary? Shivani, Heenan, probably Tenay for me, and honestly, you're gonna laugh. Dusty's hysterical.
He's the Vince McMahon and Booker T of WCW commentary. Really, it's like one that you find entertaining, but he's really, really bad. I mean, you probably would potentially say Bischoff.
I was thinking maybe Bischoff, yeah. And I can see Tenay.
Probably not Scott Hudson, or definitely not Mark Madden.
Yeah. Probably Rhodes or Bischoff.
Yeah.
Probably 3 votes for Tenay for number 3 spot, I think. He's going to fill in that spot for Shivani.
He played a valuable role when they had brought in like the cruiserweights and people from like luchadors in Japan and stuff like that, because Heenan and Shivani didn't give a fuck about like those aspects at that point in their career.
But that's one of the best things about watching them do the commentary with him is he's just saying the names of moves and they're absolutely crapping on him for even knowing what a hurricanrana is, and it's funny.
I mean, you could say Jim Ross still.
Oh yeah, he was. He was a big name in WCW.
And I think once you get to WCW, you're probably more likely to like lean into the NWA side of things, and then you could say Gordon Soley and stuff like that.
Larry Zbyszko.
Not Larry Zbyszko.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. No.
That's why I was laughing, because like we're not gonna end up going with that.
Yeah.
But, you know what though? Shivani on the WWF side, you got to give him some credit. He does get at least on one of the most iconic calls of that era, where Hogan and Warrior face off in the Royal Rumble, and it's his voice.
You know, I can't picture it, to be honest. I don't know why.
I mean, if you want to look at like also other commentators from other promotions as well, like again, we could make a super long list about them. So I don't think we're going to make like Mount Rushmore for every single promotion. But if you look at AEW, Excalibur's great. I think Excalibur's a fantastic commentator. I think he does the rate at which he speaks when they do those cutaways.
I don't know how he does
things
it.
coming up. Yeah, he is just he's a marvel.
I don't know where he gets the amount of air to do all that, but he's great. I would say Taz has found his niche again in AEW.
Yeah, he's definitely a lot better in AEW than he was in TNA.
I think Rick Starks has a future on commentary.
So does Daddy Magic Matt Menard. He's very great on commentary as well.
Jericho can be good when he doesn't want to just like yell.
Yeah, he's a bit yelly.
Feeling.
Yeah. I mean, Mark Henry's terrible, so we're probably have that.
But you know what? God
it's
bless
time for the
Mark
main event.
Henry.
Yeah, but it is time for the main event. And,
I saw. I don't remember what it was in reference to, but it was something about AEW having another like, hey, we're gonna do this match again in a rematch or whatever. I saw a great tweet. Sorry, I can't quote the person, but they put down, it's time for the same event.
Oh no, that was when people were making fun of SummerSlam for literally being WrestleMania again.
No, this was like this week.
Yeah,
it might be in relation to the Jericho Danielson thing again, but
might be. I don't remember offhand, but
yeah, there's that side of things. Ring of Honor, you've got it's Kevin Kelly, Nigel McGuinness, and Ian Riccoboni, the top ones there.
I would argue Lenny Leonard and Prazak, because their voices on the call for so many of the early iconic Ring of Honor matches.
Yeah, I guess that's fair as well. ECW's basically only Joey Styles.
It's Joey Styles.
Maybe you could add what was his name before?
Begrudgingly Don Callis.
Yeah, Don Callis. Yeah.
Cyrus the Virus. Yeah.
Yeah, Cyrus the Virus. Yeah. You've got actually Lucha Underground. I want to mention this because that's the only time I've actually enjoyed Matt Striker's commentary is Lucha Underground.
I'll agree with that.
And fucking Vampiro was actually really good on commentary. I mean, he was definitely like just having a ball, and they're just coming across. That's coming across the other.
There's something to be said for like a taped, post-produced environment.
Mm. And then TNA, it's essentially Mike Tenay and Don West.
It's Tenay, Don West. I'd argue Taz again. Good for Taz. And
well, I thought Taz. I didn't really like Taz in TNA.
He was just collecting a paycheck, but
And then Josh Matthews was fine until they made him a character. And then he was essentially Michael Cole from 2011.
I loved, by the way, with Michael Cole, I loved when he was doing the fuck this NXT. I don't want to watch this.
Oh, no, I mean, that was the best part of his heel character was him shitting on that show. And that show deserved to be shit on. So everyone could get on board with him doing that. But then when it translated into the Jerry Lawler stuff, that was just way too much.
I think it's just terrible that Michael Cole, this respected voice of wrestling, just went to this Tuesday night show and was like, I hate this.
He had a gong. I love the gong where it's just like, this is terrible. Bang, 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 bang. Michael Cole had probably more of those kind of spots for him than almost anybody else. I mean, he had his own little like bulletproof chamber he was in and everything. And yeah, I mean, Jim Ross, of course, had his couple of matches where he was doing a stunner to people and whatnot. But the AEW one, it's Shivani, Excalibur, Taz, and a fourth one. Yeah, I guess maybe Jim Ross by default, but WCW, Shivani, Heenan, Tenay, and either Rhodes or Bischoff. I'd probably say Rhodes. Maybe make that, or maybe Jim Ross. I think it's worth going Jim Ross instead of Dusty.
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go with that, just to make that an extra little list on top of all the other ones that we're doing.
Again,
most Mount Rushmore,
subscribe to the Patreon.
Yeah.
Because we give you all this content, please.
Think of it this way. If you wanted the Mount Rushmore of one of these lists, you're already getting like 12 more. So
can we talk about terrible ones now? Just for a little bit before we finalize the best ones for the commentary today. Yeah,
so I have a list of a few. One of them being that I mentioned earlier, Todd Grisham on commentary, because man,
it's Christian.
The it's Christian thing stands out to me. That was such a bad fucking call that I don't care what else that he did. That was so bad that it made it. That's the thing I remember. And it's not like he did anything good to compensate for it. It was just the most bland. I'm not actually interested when I'm supposed to. I'm checked out of this fucking job commentating spot I've ever heard. Hey, it's Christian.
That whole Christian thing is just crazy to me. Like, that's just capping it off the whole stupidity of the fact of, he was supposed to be the guy that took out Jeff Hardy with the fireworks and all this other stuff and debut and be like alongside Edge and have a big match at WrestleMania, and decided, everyone found out about that, so we're going to have him debut on ACW and just wither away for a little while.
That's one of the worst.
Basically be the only star in a company that's dying.
That's one of the worst things they ever did, honestly.
And so that Todd Grisham just summed up probably everybody's feelings. Like, it's Christian on the show that no one cares about. Like,
he is he's in the range. We got to talk about Mike Adamle. Now, Adamle, we've since figured out it's not 100% his fault as far as just like, being bad at your job or whatever. He has memory issues, and he has I forget exactly what the diagnosis was, but he had like concussions or something before, I think, right?
Was it also like CTE based?
I think so. Let me see if I can find the like technical thing that they've said for him. I know that there's something about like post concussion kind of treatment or something, but he the CTE or whatever it is that is affecting him is the reason why we got some calls like, oh, it's Jeff Harvey instead of Jeff Hardy. But I mean, at the time we didn't know. We were just like, God damn, this guy can't fucking learn anybody's names. What the hell?
I mean, he's more memorable to me as a bad. Obviously, he wasn't commentary and wasn't good at his job, but he was a bad authority figure more than he was a bad.
Oh my God, he was such a ineffective Raw general manager, and I think he's probably the guy that killed the GM role when it literally became, he's a guy with a suit. Mike Adamle, like,
I mean, I would say that. I mean, he was there was a big collection of really bad. I think we've already done GMs and authority figures beforehand. But it's just like it's mainly him and the laptop that are the worst of the worst. But yeah, he was a bad commentator. But I don't know whether it feels mean to put him on this list again. Yeah, knowing what we know.
Especially when we can say about some of the other ones, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would not feel bad about putting Adnan Verk on this list.
Well, Adnan Verk here is, he wants to remind everybody that this episode is sponsored by Manscaped.
What do you do that for?
I'm so happy that Adnan Verk had popped up just to be able to continually call back to that because it's such a fun voice to do. We got a nice day today at the ballpark. It's a cool 82 degrees with a nice breeze going in there. He did not fit whatsoever. He sounds fantastic for baseball. If he was calling, a Phillies game or something like that, then fuck yeah, man. Like, that is exactly what I picture. But when you start getting him to be like, talking about the stuff that's going on Monday Night Raw, it does not work.
Yeah. So he's definitely a contender. I think Lita, despite only being on a few things, could be a contender for this. But she was terrible in the Mae Young Classic. And
so bad that I don't remember anything about it. I just blocked her out.
Yeah, but it wasn't good. A blast from the past for people that were watching the very first episodes of Monday Night Raw. Rob Bartlett, yeah. Rob Bartlett was...
Would you believe they wanted Howard Stern? They didn't get Howard Stern.
Yeah, so he was like some sort of comedian, right?
Yeah.
And they just brought him on to be... Because I guess he was somewhat well-known. He'd been on stand-up shows, and so they thought, okay, add him in. He can make a few little funny quips. He had no idea what he was talking about. Is he the guy that talks about how big Yokozuna is?
No, that's Art Donovan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
Which, I mean, for a one-time thing, it's one of the most iconic. How big is this guy?
Let's talk about that whole team for a moment, because it's Savage, Monsoon, had that fucking guy going, oh, how much does this guy weigh? Gorilla, is he a wrestler? How much does this guy weigh?
If you're talking a one-time worst, it's probably just him.
I don't think it gets worse.
King of the Ring 94, right? That's what it was?
Yeah.
I mean, to the point that if somebody says worst commentator, the first thing that comes to my mind is, how much does this guy weigh? Every fucking time. Doesn't matter. Like if somebody says, we're talking about Booker T here, I'd be like, no, I'm thinking about that first. But Booker T.
You mentioned Booker T, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the shucky ducky quack quack thing is I'm just going to create a catchphrase. Why? Because I want a catchphrase. To the point that they've now, I mean, it's been a few years, but that they have the little graphic pops up on screen, a little rubber duckies, and one of them's got the Booker T dreadlocks.
The fact that everyone on the roster is on his Faith 5.
Yeah, his Fave 5 has like 14 people in it.
Yeah.
That he had a great discussion one time about telling the difference between Sin Cara Negro and Sin Cara Azul, and like you could check them out by the bottom of their boots or something. He's terrible, absolutely terrible.
Since you mentioned it, you know, look at the eyes of Sin Cara. Like you can't look at his eyes; he's wearing a mask.
Let me see if I can find any Booker T's worst commentary. Like quotes
John Cena,
or something.
I think John Cena was facing Del Rio, and Booker T literally goes, with limited skills and ability, John Cena became the top name in WWE. Like, yeah, let's just tell everybody he sucks. Like,
let's see some. There's a there's a subreddit post on Squared Circle of people saying their favorite lines from Booker T. I don't even remember what some of these are, but let me read some of these. Oh my goodness, he just left a skid mark on that boy. Sop her up with a biscuit.
Okay, see, this is where you're getting into Nikita Lyons.
Michael Cole, I had a dream that you died. What? This one's I wish I had the context to some of these. This one's in all caps. Batista just got knocked, slapped the hell out. That's what just happened. Batista is down. Batista is down. Batista is down. A minute later, Batista is down. Batista is down. You ugly Cole. Let's see. There's Jason Jordan running around using illegal tactics. Big dog eats my ass. What? I wish I remember what that one was.
I am so ready for Booker T to be on NXT.
I wasn't watching at this time frame, but you guys might be able to fill us in on this. His time in TNA, where he was a character.
Oh my god!
Oh, that
the Black Snow thing was maybe the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. So he was in the Main Event Mafia, and he's calling a show with Kevin Nash, and he enters the ring and starts beating up Xavier Woods
while commentating his own beating on him. So funny.
Oh, I picked him up, and oh, there he goes. Oh, Creed's down. Oh God. This
one just says that their favorite quote from him is "Ha." That's all it is.
And like Booker T, when you're getting into like the best of the worst, like 'cause it's so bad, but it's so funny.
It says, this is Malixis on Reddit. My personal favorite was during one of Ryback's squash matches against some jobber who looked 17. After the shell shock, he says, "Somebody call Child Protective Services." That old chicken makes good soup in response to Great Khali making out with Mae Young.
Okay. See?
Booker T is absolutely one of the worst commentators that it's one of the most fun to listen to the point that whenever he's on commentary for more than, a few episodes, it's like, all right, I don't want to listen to him anymore. But then when he can pop up for a guest stint, it's like, oh, yeah, this is great. Booker T's on. A little bit goes a long way. Kind of like a Vince McMahon in some ways. But he is definitely in that range. I always thought that David Otunga was like the boring version of that, where he's just not good.
Awful.
Yeah, Otunga was just so bland. Bland and bad. That's kind of the worst mix as well, because it's not like he's even that entertaining with how bad he's being.
Speaking of bland and bad, Percy Watson.
Yes.
Yeah, he didn't really contribute much. Which is a shame, too, because it seemed like he could have been a good fit. But, yeah, I mean, it's a different type of skill set. Just because somebody can have a little bit of charisma on the microphone or something doesn't mean that they translate over to commentary. Mick Foley is an example. He's even said it himself. He's like, yeah, it didn't really work for me. Yeah,
Mick Foley's gone on record lately as saying the reason he left the company is because he couldn't stand Vince McMahon yelling at him while he was on commentary.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
I'm trying to have a look more at this, like some Rob Bartlett quotes and stuff like that, just to pick up how bad he was. Apparently, on the first episode of Raw that he does this Mike Tyson impression for like a considerable period of time, and it manages to provoke a conversation with Randy Savage, where Randy Savage talks about the fact that it's bullshit that Tyson went into prison in the first place. Which is
really? Oh
which
my
is
god!
good.
Oh my god!
He apparently calls Coco Beware Gary Coleman.
Oh, jeez.
He says something about Shawn Michaels pulling a knife on Max Moon backstage.
Oh.
Yeah, just during their match or whatever. It says like, I haven't found the actual quote, but it's just like apparently makes some reference to pulling a knife on Max Moon for some reason. And then on the first episode, he says makes a joke about Yokozuna looking like he wears a diaper, and turned to Vince and said on air, "That's one big Oriental."
Jesus.
It's funny because he's not even an Oriental; he's Samoan.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there's a steady stream of terrible commentators.
Yeah, I mean, let's be thankful guys like Mark Madden didn't make their way to WWE.
And there's so many different people that have been on commentary for a shorter time frame, or even just like a one-time shot where they were really, really bad. But you can't really, hey, this one superstar was on commentary for a match and they were terrible. Well, you can't put them in the Mount Rushmore of worse. That's not fair. But way too many people to name have been in that role, where it's like, well, why don't we put them on commentary and they can talk about the match? And then like a Charlotte. Every time Charlotte's on commentary, I hate it. Hate it with a passion. She just ends up getting in the way of the rest of the commentators, and not even in like a, oh, I'm getting myself over because I'm on the heel kind of way. It just ends up being annoying.
Yeah. Talk about Stephanie McMahon at that Royal Rumble.
Oh my god, that was really not good.
Yeah, it's.
You remember that, Tony?
Yeah, I remember being kind of like, oh man, I hope that this doesn't become a regular thing. I don't remember any like specific lines that she had, but
she was just all over everybody, and like, I think they had King on that one for some reason, and if he dared get excited about like Kelly or something, she was like right there to throw a wet blanket on it, just because, hey, we're making history here.
I don't think a wet blanket's going to do it. You need a whole fucking cold shower to get them sorted.
I
would say if we're going with a Mount Rushmore of worst, I mean Bartlett is.
After reading those quotes, I think we have to.
I think if you watch Rob Bartlett, you would say he was the worst you've heard.
I would say
I've only watched a few clips, but like he's bad.
Even if it's just a legacy pick, why not? I would say Booker T's on that list.
I think I'd feel it's harsh to put Booker T on there because there's a level of entertaining bad, which kind of I can live with. I'd much more happily put David Otunga on that list.
Yeah, he covers the bland bad.
I mean, I'd be totally fine with putting him on there. Todd Grisham, I'd put potentially.
And Nunberg.
That Nunberg.
I mean, he was so bad. He was kicked out after.
He was fired in like 2 weeks. He didn't make a month. I know that for a fact.
He made a month, didn't he?
No.
I don't think it was a full month. I don't remember for sure.
Somebody check that real quick.
Let's see. Nunberg. April 12th, 2021 to May 24th, 2021. So just over a month. A month and a half, yeah.
It's really cutting it close there.
He was terrible. Like,
yeah. He was awful.
And he's like famously terrible nowadays. Like, as bad as he is, and we all know he's bad, I think we all kind of like Booker T on commentary, even so. And I don't think anybody would say that about these four that we've picked. Like, we wouldn't want to actually just sit through and listen to this guy.
Well, what was the fourth one you were thinking? Grisham?
Yeah, Grisham, I'd say.
I mean, he is he's easily the most bland of the Michael Cole mold.
Yeah. I would say, like, if it was my choice, because I know you wouldn't agree with it, but Matt Striker would be my other choice as worse than Todd Grisham.
I'm marking out, bro.
the guy that swallows an encyclopedia and thinks that he's better than you because of it.
So we got Bartlett, Otunga, Verk, and Grisham, with this little asterisk that Booker T's only not on there because he's so fucking fun. WCW side of things, AEW side of things. So let's go with, I guess, commentary teams and settle on that before we bounce back around to settling on the individuals. Okay. Heenan and Monsoon is one that we had brought up. JR and King is one that we had brought up.
Michael Cole and Taz.
Cole and Taz is a possibility. I actually liked Cole at JBL way better.
I'd say Cole and Taz.
Yeah, Cole and Taz have the longevity. They were a partnership for basically the formative years of SmackDown. And yeah, JBL and Cole were good, and they had their own show because they were that good. But I thought that, like, I was always disappointed when they moved Taz over onto ECW. Well, for a lot of reasons, but I thought that his partnership with Cole was the best that Cole. That was Cole at his peak prior to nowadays, where he basically knows what he's doing and has a bit more freedom to do it. Yeah, that was what I still liked Cole as a commentator.
Yeah, I would say that when they moved Cole into the role of, he's now taking over for Jim Ross and he's now the voice of WWE, I think it got much worse for him.
What are some other ones that we can put in here? Because I'm looking through the list, and I mean, there's a lot of like crossover. Obviously, like you look at like this one list, they have Gorilla and Jesse. They've got Jesse and Vince. They've got Paul Heyman and JR. They've got Morrow with Nigel and Percy as number 6. Really, we could still do Cole and JBL. Doesn't mean that we can't have him on there twice.
Is an interesting one that again was only short lived, so I don't know whether we want to count it or not. Mauro Ranallo and Daniel Bryan.
Oh, for the Cruiserweight Classic.
They were awesome as a duo.
They were the perfect team for that task.
I wouldn't put them on there. I enjoyed it, but I think it was mostly just Morrow.
I would put the threesome of Vince, JR, and King, but we already have JR and King.
Yeah, I wouldn't just add Vince to that. Vince, it's still good, but like Vince diminishes it.
I think I probably would try to put Vince on there with like maybe Vince and Jesse.
It'd have to be Ventura, I'd say. It's either him and Ventura or it's him and Savage. And
I would say Vince and Jesse are probably the best for Vince.
Vince and Jesse, Cole and Taz, JR King, Heenan and Monsoon.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Then we got
definitely not Ranallo and JBL.
Yeah, not that one. And for anybody who's like, what about like Corey and different people? Corey works well with a lot of people, but I wouldn't Mount Rushmore him anytime soon. Maybe down the line, if he's there long enough that he might end up bumping somebody off. But I will say, shout out to how Corey Graves does work well with a lot of people. He was good with Tom Phillips. He's good with Vic Joseph. He's good with Byron. He's good with Cole.
I think the best of Corey was Corey, Tom, and Byron.
Probably.
There was a real friendship there.
Yeah, Tom was the serious play-by-play guy. He did a good job, too. Corey's the mean play-by-play guy. Byron's the middle ground of the two and the butt of the jokes and everything.
Byron is like this nerd that everybody loves to pick on for some reason.
Yeah, he's if we did, no, which we're not going to do it, Mount Rushmore of commentary nerds, he would definitely be the top one of that. On the play-by-play side, we had JR, Michael Cole, Mauro Ranallo, and Vince McMahon. Pretty good to lock that in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we didn't settle on the color commentary. We got Lawler, we got Heenan, and then we've got a long list of other people. Ventura, JBL, Taz, Heyman, Cornette, McAfee, Graves, Booker T, Wade Barrett.
Oh, so this is for color?
Yeah.
So
I'll give you a thing on Skype to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see the full list of.
I'd say King, Heenan, probably Jesse, and who else?
I mean, my choice would be either Taz or Heyman.
I'd say Heyman.
I really liked Heyman on commentary, but I think that Heyman's run was during like a really important time between like 2000, like basically the entirety of the invasion.
It's unfortunate. If it was any other era but the invasion, I think it'd be more fondly remembered.
Oh yeah, but he was a great commentator. But I'd say Taz for longevity would probably merit it over Paul Heyman.
What do you think, Tony? Taz or Heyman?
Well,
I mean, you probably want JBL.
You're thinking, both of you are thinking Jesse as one of them?
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be 3 votes for Jesse then. So Lawler, Heenan, Jesse. And then it's either Heyman or Taz. Or I would probably pick JBL, yeah. So between those, I would probably lean more towards Heyman over Taz.
Okay, so between Heyman and JBL, Callum.
I mean, just due to longevity, I would potentially choose JBL, but then that means choosing JBL, and that's something that I just don't do. So I'd choose Paul Heyman.
Out of the triple threat,
that does not fit the brief.
Let's do this the mathematical way that we've done in the past. I would rank JBL, then Heyman, then Taz.
I would say Heyman, Taz, JBL.
Taz, Heyman, JBL.
Okay, so then it's not JBL because there would be 2 of the number 3 spot. So not JBL. Paul Heyman would be a number 1 and 2 number 2s. Taz would be a number 1, a 2, and a 3. So it'd be Paul Heyman.
Hey, look at that mathematically.
when you don't have a guarantee or whatever like that, you resort to the default on a technicality kind of things, which would basically mean at this point, if we were going to go for like a B tier, then obviously we would carry that over. It would end up being JBL and Taz, and then we would just need 2 more from that other part of the list. So
I'd like to again remind everyone, patreon.com/SmarkOutMoment. $1 is more than worth all
for
of
an
this
entire month worth of this kind of stuff.
We would do so much more for the Patreon too.
That's the thing.
More people just subscribed.
That's the thing. If you think that these are complicated and that these are really good to listen to for an hour and a half worth of this discussion, imagine if we got, $10 a month from the people that are regularly listening to this, or if we got thousands of people for $1 a month.
Yeah, wait till you get into us just talking and breaking down The Simpsons and death, and Patreon's good.
So if we went JBL, Taz, and 2 others for a B tier, we got Cornette, McAfee, Graves, Booker T, Wade Barrett.
I'd probably say Cornette and Booker T.
I'd give one of those spots to Graves at this point for a B tier. And then probably not Barrett because he hasn't been around long enough. Same with McAfee. Maybe Cornette. Might be my number 4 on that. What were you saying that you would pick, Rob? Cornette and who?
I was saying Cornette and Booker T because Booker T is so funny.
And what about you, Callum?
I don't really like
much of them.
Any of them really, because like Cornette is just a dick, and I'm not a fan of Graves at all. I don't think he's very good. And the rest of them are a bit much of a muchness. Really, Booker T. I enjoy Booker T, but he's not good, so I wouldn't put him on a positive Mount Rushmore for it. And who are the other ones? White Barrett and Pat McAfee haven't been around long enough. So realistically, the only other ones that I would even consider being on another Mount Rushmore are JBL and Taz. So
well, those would be the 2 blocks. All right, well then.
All right, so up yours, B tier is basically what he's saying.
Yeah, I'm basically saying they're the only other good ones.
All right, well then, both Rob and I would say Cornette, I guess, and then you cool with Graves?
Yeah, I can live with Graves.
All right, cool. There you go. That's a B tier. And then we are working with a group of these potentials for the full, like, golden standard Mount Rushmore of commentators. We're working with Jerry the King Lawler, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jesse the Body Ventura, Paul the E Dangerously Heyman, good old JR, Michael Cole, Mauro Ranallo, and Vince McMahon. With a little bit of an asterisk about Gorilla Monsoon, but we're not going to put him on there because he's on the commentary team.
JR, King, and Heenan.
I mean, we got King, we got JR. We're probably going to go with those two. But, yeah, I mean, there's room to play around with it.
I'd say Heenan and Vince for their iconic voices.
I won't put Vince on the top one, I don't think. I mean, I don't sign off on the other three. I think JR, King, and Heenan make a lot of sense.
Then I think it has to be Cole.
That's where I was going to go. I was going to say Heenan's a 4 votes for us, or 3 votes. And then I would go Cole over McMahon. I'd put McMahon on the B tier.
It is somewhat annoying that I'd kind of have to agree with it. Just, again, he is the voice that the most recent generation of wrestling fans most associate with WWE. So yeah, Michael Cole or Vince McMahon subconscious. Or his conscious, really. His subconscious is a dangerous place to go into. But, like, his puppet is the 4th guy on this list.
And then the B tier would be McMahon, Jesse Ventura. And then we could kind of play around with the idea because it wouldn't necessarily have to be Mauro and Heyman. It could potentially be some of the other ones. Like, could be Gorilla in there. Could be JBL, could be Taz. That's probably what we're working with, though, is Gorilla, JBL, Taz, Heyman, and Ranallo for those 2 spots.
I'd put Ranallo in. I think he's merits it. And then the other, I mean, I'd still back Taz, but that's for anybody else's choices. Really.
I like Taz. Yeah, I'd back Taz for B tier. And then I think I'd be comfortable with Mauro too, because he is a great play-by-play announcer.
And the fact that we, just me being me, I'm like, oh man, we're 1 away from a C tier. Paul Heyman, Gorilla Monsoon, JBL, and either probably Corey Graves or Jim Cornette.
Probably Jesse. I'd put it at that point.
Well, Jesse's
B tier.
Oh, did we already put him in the B tier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Heyman, Monsoon, JBL, and either Graves or Cornette. I'd probably lean more towards Graves than Cornette.
Yeah, Graves, yeah.
Longevity. Look at that. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 things that we did today. Actually, no, 2 of them don't fully count. I was doing them on the side for myself of the panelists. I was like, I'd probably go Matt Camp, Scott Stanford, Charlie Caruso, and Renee Young was my my panelists. And then the commentary panelists, I was like, it's JR, or Jerry Lawler, JBL, Booker T, and maybe Sam Roberts or someone. I didn't fully settle on any of that, and we didn't discuss it, but I don't think you guys have any real opinion about that.
Yeah.
I mean, we got around a dozen of these lists.
I mean, but there you go. All the more reason why $1 a month.
Not asking much. It's what, one thing of not getting extra stuff on your pizza, I think. One time. At this point, it's probably less than that because everything's like, it's $2.50 for a couple of pieces of pepperoni. I kind of want some pizza. Damn. Yeah, that is probably all the discussion that we can get out of that. I mean, I don't think that there's really any other kind of variations of broadcast personnel that we can get into. It's not really like there's, hey, the person who does the video package voice thing. We don't know who the hell those people are, or any of those. But that is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. It was on the list of, when are we going to get around to this kind of a Mount Rushmore? And hey, look at that. We did it. 2-hour edition. I don't think there's many podcasts out there that would have said, hey, we did talk for 2 hours about the differences between the commentary teams and all that, but that's what you get here. You get some special different stuff you can't get elsewhere. So tell us your lists in the comments below, whether you agree, whether you disagree, if you are like, man, you guys forgot about this person. I don't think we've had any scenarios where we've, in retrospect, been like, crap, yeah, we should have put that person in, and then we discussed it off stage, like we're on a stage right now, off air. But maybe, you never know. So drop your comments, tell us your thoughts and everything like that, and make sure that if you are interested in helping out on the monetary side of things, hit that button on the join button or the Patreon or the little thanks button or any other variations like that. And another way that you can help us out just by not doing anything on the money side of things, but helping our algorithm and all, is to hit the like button, to subscribe to this channel, to pass us along to other people by sharing it. If you are on like a message board, or you got like a group chat or a Facebook group or something like that, and you drop this podcast in there and you go, hey, check these guys out, they're really cool. Or you retweet things, or you share something on, I don't know, you're hanging out with your buds and you're like, hey, look at this, check out this podcast. Then that is also great too, because the more people that listen, the more that we can bring you good stuff. And of course, if you go to amangotree.com, you can see plenty of different links, like our Facebook and our Twitter and all, and fanboysanonymous.com for all the stuff that's happening there, for like movie reviews and commentary tracks and all that stuff. You can see my personal social media accounts at Tony Mango. Easy to click on that list. And you can follow what these guys are up to on their social media accounts and everything else that they've got going on. Rob?
Yep, I am everywhere at Dude Felice. That's DUDEFELICE. That's Twitter mostly. That's mostly where you want to find me. I am on Instagram and Twitch as well. I will eventually have a dudefelice.com, which will have more blogs and more just like catch-all kind of content that I wouldn't be getting paid for, but I still want to express. And you can also find my work on smark.moment.com. Obviously, every week I contribute to the Triple Threat article, and Callum also contributes weekly to smark.moment.com with the power rankings, right, Callum?
Yep, power rankings is where you'll find my written stuff down on Sparko Moment every single week. That's where I basically position the wrestlers from WWE and NXT in whatever order I so choose. My rule is final. I decide who's doing well, and you have to live with it. And then I also, I'm not in control of I am in control of the fantasy league, but I'm not winning it at the moment. At the moment, Tony is on top, but due to my victory in the Extreme Rules prediction contest, I have doubled up the points of Solo Sikoa because he seemingly is winning every single week right now. So I'm going to try and build on that momentum. Of course, he didn't actually wrestle on Raw because the company hates me, but that's fine. But yeah, I'll see if I'll be able to claw up some space there. You can check that out over on sparkoman.com and also by searching wwefantasyleague.com. And you can find me on Twitter at WithMeister14.
All right, everybody, that is it for this episode, but we've got another coming your way this week that is a combination of the hot tags and a different main event, the mailbag, the final mailbag of the year, quarter 4.
I hate it.
Yeah, it's sneaking up on us like that. And, we won't do another one of these until January after we get through day 1 and before we get into the Royal Rumble. So now is your chance to take advantage of the mailbag and submit your questions in advance. If you can't join us live on Friday afternoon when we're going to be doing this, if you are able to join us live, it'll probably be around like 3 o'clock Eastern time, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit after. Kind of depends on what our schedules are like, but we'll let you guys know on the Facebook group at the Mega Maniacs. And if you, of course, have your subscriptions on your email alerts set up on YouTube, then you will know when we go live because it'll actually give you an email about that. So that's another great way of knowing. But if you're able to join us live for that, then that's even better because you're able to get some super chats in and keep the discussion going in whatever random way that you can. Maybe you've got your questions that you've submitted and then you want like a follow-up question or something. It's a great way to do that. But if you can't, send them in advance and we'll try to get around to those as much as we can. But that's going to be when we talk about all the other hot tag discussion, like the new United States champion and the 2 new additions to the roster from Monday Night Raw and whatever happens on NXT tonight and on Dynamite tomorrow and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for all that. And we will see you there. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out.